So to get started, the whole premise of this is the delays of ZHOS V2 have been, well, very there, as everyone will be able to see, been recreating Rockstar with GTA 6. And there is rumours you might get GTA 6 before you get ZHOS 2. So those rumours are false. I can assure you. But the whole point of this is to allow you guys to provide any questions, any suggestions, and some general feedback from the previous version of ZHOS and what the resource should do, feel like, and how it should perform going forward. Because the whole premise of the version 2 of the resource was to completely fix the absolute monstrosity that was V1. So far, I can confirm it is a lot nicer to use. It's a lot more stable for the actual users. There's a lot more security and safety there to stop issues such as ropes attaching to random people, random entities, random weapons across the map. It's just not physically possible with how the logic is wrote in this version. And so much more of just ensuring that everything is really considered, because a lot of lessons were learned from the version 1, and since version 1's come out, a lot of new methods have actually been found out, and I'm still working one of the biggest parts of the resource, which is the hose aspect. That has been my current stalemate, because I'm wanting to really balance the hose between the performance side and the actual visual and realistic side. I need to find a nice thin line between that and then actually somehow write that code for that. I've had about 5 different methods so far, which some I've been happy with, some I haven't. Some I've been very happy with, but it's just not working for the life in it. So that's still to do. But as you saw in one of the latest work in progresses, that was is making good progress. I did post some about the Hydrant connection with that. You just didn't see the other end of that, where it was a bit gobbledygook on the other side, because of some issues I'm trying to refine out with it. And yeah, I just really don't want to go with the performance intensive, as good as that would look. What on earth just happened to me? All right. So as good as it'd look and as good as it'd feel, it's not useful for the server, and especially each client. So everything's been kept to a minimum as much as possible. So I can confirm that currently, with the performance standpoint, the resource does run at a 0.0% completely idle for every single user. That doesn't matter what you are doing. Well, obviously, if there is another hose within the vicinity, you might jump up to like 0.01, 0.02. Nothing that's going to impact your CPU usage at all. But if you're completely idle and you have no to the resource, it won't impact you like it used to. Another thing is interactions. Obviously, interactions have now moved to the zlib, which has been worked on recently, and that those have been I can't even explain how much better they are. They're so easy to find. The hints help you. They're a lot more responsive, and the flaws of the original interaction system on ZHOS have completely gone. And added on top of that, it is just so much more performant for everybody. As previously, if you went up to a vehicle with all these interactions on, you'd probably be looking at about 0.60, 0.50 ms, and my lag is going a bit insane. But you'd be looking about that, whereas now you can be around 2 vehicles that have loads and loads of interactions, and you're only going to peak at a max 0.10, and that resource usage only happens on the lib, and not actually on the ZHOS resource itself. So we'll get into now is, what questions do you guys have? If you have any questions, raise your hand. We'll get that answered. If you have any feedback, any suggestions, anything, let me know. We already have one. Let me just figure out how to actually allow you. One moment. There you go.
Hello guys, I have one question. Do
Go on.
you have a release date of Zeos?
Pardon?
My English is so bad, but do you have a release date of Zeos?
Not currently. I don't want to provide any promises because we have a lot going on, infrastructure-wise and stuff like that. But ZHOS is being continuously worked on at constant times by myself. My rough estimation, now this is not a promise, it's a rough estimation, is before the end of the year. I want
Do-
it out as soon as possible. I just don't want to rush it because that's something I did with the last version of the resource at the very end. It kind of got rushed.
Okay, it's good. Because B1 is so buggy.
Yeah, the code, if you ever saw the code, well, you won't see the code, but
Yes,
it is
yes.
an absolute mess as compared to what it will be now. But that resource was made over numerous years because I originally started looking at that whole system back in 23 and made my
Okay.
first version of that, and then it just got built upon and built upon over years until I finally got something that was stable to actually release.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
I have a good question in the chat from because I got to botch your name, do apologise. Question for you, Josh. Will the Z Interactions UI Kaza? Will the Z Interactions UI of ZHose be updated in V2 closer to the UI currently used in ZPPV fan using zlib? You've already answered that. Will there be any additional features such as changing the pressure of the hose? And will you be able to edit color the hose lines, size, etc.?
I can answer this in multiple ways. Stand by. So, if I actually do this, you lot should be able to now see my screen. I might get a bit laggy for that. But we can actually go on to the config here. So, to find the top of your config now, you will be able to create various hose types. Each hose type has its own texture, it has its own radius, and a few other little misc things that are going to be outlined in the documentation. So some hoses you'll be able to have red, yellow, green, whatever you want, whatever texture you use. And you'll also be able to change the thickness of that hose, whether you want a nice little thin one, nice big thick one. You can easily define them in here within the config, which the docs will outline. And that instantly integrates over to our vehicles. If I come down to an example here, we have the types here that we've defined in the config. Simple, attack, and supply. If that answers your question. And actually, I forgot. As for pressure, yes, I want to incorporate so you can individually control pressure for each hose. Might be a sinking nightmare at start, but inevitably, and at the end, it will obviously work. And it's been something that we did want to do with the version 1 of ZHose, but we just couldn't find the time and the resources to really finish it off with that UI. So it kind of got released a bit early as to what it was expected to be. So another example of the changes to UI is foam. Whereas previously you'd be actually getting your foam nozzle out, now you will have to pump foam through specific lines, valves that are connected to the vehicle. So the pump operator has so much more to do on scene now. Before they obviously got to press a few buttons and stand there. But this update, one of the things has been making sure that they have more things to do. Everybody on the Fireground has more things to do. And I will answer that question in a moment. I'll just see what Mr. Torres wants.
Yo,
Well,
I just had a question as well that I think people should know.
go on.
Oh, why did my audio fuck up? Obviously, we've had this conversation, but how far are you willing to go gameplay versus realism? I think is a good question.
It's a very thin line, that. But the problem with the resource and a lot of resources in FiveM and just for general games is realism is obviously amazing. Everybody wants realism. It educates you, it does everything. But for those people who want more of a casual gameplay, realism isn't what they want. But then the people who don't want a casual gameplay, they want realism. So it is finding a nice thin line between what is realistic and what will those realistic players like, or what will those casual players like. The line is very hard to figure out, but that's the whole premise of feedback and suggestions. It's to get what people like, what people want to see, and then you can kind of gauge between that. I will be going with a very casual, realistic feel. You will have that realistic aspect of opening your hydrants, closing your hydrants. Your hydrants have different pressure values. Your hydrants can have issues, but it's not something that's very confusing. It's quite simple. It's quite straightforward. And then when you go to the pump panel, we don't want to make something that's stupidly complex for people. For one, that makes our job harder. We then have to write more docs. We have to explain to people more how they use that resource and more videos, and then they have more tickets, and that clogs our ticket system more. So it will be a good riding the line between them. Of it will be realistic, but it will be for those casual players as well, and it will be nice and simple. But like you add with the version 1, I will add some values in there that for the people who really, really want that realism, they can tweak those values for like specific intakes, outtakes, pressure values, everything. It'll really, you can fine tune it if you really want that.
Question from Gaza again regarding the hose carry model. Obviously, does that mean that when it comes to deploying a hose, will you have to choose the type of hose line you want? And does it mean you'll be carrying it around? Does it mean that you can only attach certain hose types to certain, for example, inlets? So can you attach a small attack? Can you not attach a small attack line to a supply valve, for example?
So the hose carry model is something that I got inspiration from. I changed, and I'll have to do a lot of talking here, so you'll have to listen a lot. I did a humongous change to the way the valves and everything works. Previously, you just go up to it, you press it, magically you have your hose connected. Now you must go to a specific area on the vehicle which is configured. You can then configure exactly what different hoses are there. So you have your different hose lengths. So you can have your attack lines, your supply lines. You have to then go collect them, and then you have to go connect it to a valve to then do whatever you wish with it. Attack lines won't be able to connect to hydrants. Only supply lines will connect to those valves. And there is still reels as sense in America. I forgot what you call them, like bumper lines, where the pre-connects. So they still exist. So for the people who want to quickly get off, get a reel and get going, and don't want to have to manually connect things, they still exist and are usable. But for people who want to really go a bit more in depth and connect them hose manually, that is possible. And then for those hose carrying models, I will have to show you guys. Yep. So we have two different variations of hose carrying, and these are just complete preference. Will most likely depend on your region. Here's a perfect example for you. So this is one type of hose carrying model. So this is my user having a supply line over their shoulder to then go and connect it. This tends to be like more of a European American style. But we do have the good old roll-up version, which was seen in somewhere. I'll be honest, I can't remember where I put it, but where it's in your hand and it's rolled up, as it would be in the UK. That is changeable as well. You can go into the config and you can define different ones here. So you can then obviously change the offset and what model it is. So if you want to be carrying a hose and have it specific to say this, you can obviously change what the carry type is of this specific hose, and then it directly correlates to what model your user will hold. Just to add that little bit more of a realism to it, and that little bump customizability to it. Yeah, it's a lot has been thought of stuff and a lot of concepts have gone through, and a lot of things have been rewrote constantly. But from the point I'm at now, I don't imagine going backwards on anything specific with those hose. So valves now will just be defined as valves. You'll obviously declare whether that's an intake or a discharge valve, and then they can be used accordingly. The configs you may notice from that stream then is they are JSON files. And if that means anything to you, if your favorite programming language is JSON, that's perfect for you. But that's because me and Charlie have the idea, and we've got many suggestions about a vehicle configurator system like the instant creator configurator for ZHose, where you don't have to sit there and manually go through all these files, is where you can go into the game, go into the UI, create your files for there that way, and it's nice and easy, simple setup for you, straightforward, step by step. And I'll turn to some of these in here. Stephen, yes, I do. Will there be adjustment to pressure?
Yeah, so pressure's already been kind of raised. I believe Josh said it'll be something that he looks at, but I think you said it's not necessarily an easy task as such for variable pressure.
No. Yeah, but pressure will be definitely looked at. So each hose can have its different pressure value. And then something that we could look into in the future with Zfire. With the new version of Zfire, me and Charlie have already got lots of things planned. And one of the things I thought about was definitely the pressure value, depending how fast that fire can go out. Just to add even that little bit more depth to it. But obviously that's in the future. So we'll see how that works out. And option change pressure type, yes, I will have a conversion for PSI and bar. It will be multinational kind of resource. You can flick in between things. Changes related to standpipes. So this is quite a complex thing that I looked at the very, very start of what I was working on. The new system for hydrants is very modular. So standpipes will be a lot better and they will be more synced. So essentially, what will happen is within the config, you can define what hydrants are there. Actually, I'll stream, so this is easy for you guys to understand. So you will be able to define what hydrant models exist within the world. These are the interactable hydrant models that you can connect things to, open and close. These hydrant models have a fault chance. What is the chance of them having a fault, having an error that needs to be fixed? And there's this value, which is called replace. For replace with, for your standard American things, you will probably leave it as is. But if you were doing European, you could replace this with a standpipe model. So that means once you've constructed that hydrant, it will then place a standpipe on top of it. So if you were to replace your default in-game hydrants with just grates on the floor, you could then replace and put a hydrant standpipe on top of that grate or within that grate. And then obviously you just declare exactly what positions you want to connect to and so forth. So it's something I need to look in a bit more, and I want to release the actual standpipe stuff default within the resource. I'm just waiting on models. A lot of what's currently going on is waiting for models still. It's proving really hard to get them. But yeah, so it will be modular, and there'll be a lot more information coming out about that. Because it is a bit complex for people to understand initially. But it will. There will be modular standpipes. 1,000,000% will be improved, because I hated the way they were in version 1. That was half-assed. Didn't like it. So it needs to be better, and it will be. What other questions do we have?
Oh, interesting. Water monitor
Yeah.
question. Yeah.
Shane, I do have a water monitor that I posted quite a long time ago in work in progress. That will be an add-on or a separate resource which ties into ZHose. It was supposed to be with the ZHose V1, but some complications with that just never allowed it to happen. So if you scroll up in work in progress, you'll eventually find some things on it. It's an animated model where you can actually choose it to oscillate like it would be in real life. So it's not just stationary. And Torres, another question. Remember, stretching burst nozzle function. Now, this is something I've looked at, and I've been absolutely looking at this non-stop. Stretching burst fog. I really, really want to add nozzle types into it. My biggest problem is there is not any default particles within GTA which resemble fog at all. So if this was to be something that I do and we do, it will be custom particles that are streamed. I have no clue how to make custom particles, and it is incredibly hard to find people who know how to do that or get in contact with people who do. So if any of you guys know anybody who does, please feel free to get in contact with them, because I really do want custom fog, having a fog option and things like that, because that just adds a complete another level to it. It's just something that's so incredibly hard. I have looked at every single possible particle, and I think what I'll do is I'll make a concept of it just with some base particles, and just see how people respond to it, and then from there really try and push on to really trying to get those particles made if possible, because it just adds a whole nother realism and just feature to it. This version of it is just so much packed into it as compared to the last one. I haven't used the version 1 in months. I just use this version now on my local host, because they're just not comparable, even when this one isn't finished. So that should be all those questions answered so far. And Stephen has posted some photos of that.
To add on the back of that, obviously, I know probably some of you may not have purchased Z-Hose or maybe considering migrating to it, or kind of anything along that line. Obviously, we are expanding our offerings in some cases, and with that, we will hopefully have a kind of a test server up by then, so you guys can hopefully do like most modding servers offer, hop in, give it a go, see what you think. And then from there, you can make the choice whether or not you want to obviously purchase it, have a play with it, ask any questions prior to spending that money as such. So if anybody's interested in that, etc., then that will hopefully be released prior to the Z-Hose V2 release.
What I will do now, since questions have died down a little bit, is actually take you guys into game. I will show you some sneak peeks of some areas. Do be warned, obviously this is not done. This is still in development. There will be issues. Things aren't perfect, and things are not complete. So just bear that in mind. Everything you see is relatively subject to change. It may not be final. It may completely change. It may not change at all. Who knows? I don't. Release date, like I've said, I don't want to put any restrictions. I don't want to put any pressure on myself like I did with version 1. There was so much pressure with version 1 that it got rushed at the end. My rough estimate is the end of this year, before the end of this year, but that isn't a promise. That's just an ideal time frame. Any early access testing? Yes, I have a good few communities who are ready to receive the version 2 early access once it's available, which isn't available yet. But maybe once it is actually available, I might open that scope a little bit, have more users, more communities trying to test it, just broaden that range. Because one of the main things that all of us here at Zea Development have learned from the last couple of releases, and especially Z-Hose, is that we need quality assurance, and we need people to test and really, really roughly test our resources before they come out, to ensure that everything we're never going to find every bug. It's not possible. Bugs create themselves. It's FiveM, but it's to allow you guys to just plug and play, and not have to deal with having to open tickets constantly. Obviously, you may have to open ticket for support with maybe minor issues like configuration, but hey, we can fix that quite nice and easily. Let me load this server up, and then I'll get that.
But keep your eyes up, because we may put out an expression of interest near the time for kind of some additional testing roles, etc. So and just keep your eyes out for that. There may be a form that goes out. Obviously, we're not saying that everybody will be testing, but I think, as Josh says, it'd be lovely to have a larger group of people testing to ensure that when we release the product, it is what it says on the tin, pretty much.
Okay. I'm now in the game, and if I go very laggy, just know FiveM doesn't like Discord, so I am speaking, but you just tell me I sound like Stephen Hawkins, and then everything's fine. So we come over to any form of hydrant, if I can even remind myself where I am. So to initially get started, we have these logs. These are going to show you every single vehicle you have configured, and that file has actually loaded. These can be useful in case you've set up your vehicle wrong and you're looking at why your vehicle isn't working. If it's not on this list, then it's not started by the resource and it's not detecting it at all. If we actually come over here, I'll leave this lovely monitor on screen for you. And you can see the lovely Z-holes there. And it's obviously not going to stay on screen because whenever does it? Okay, well, I'll just show that 1 minute. For example, here, instantly, one of the improvements compared to before is I can now see where my interaction points are. I can now see where on the vehicle I actually need to be looking, where I need to go. As compared to previous, you'd have no clue. And as you can see, the resource it ticks up a little bit, but it's doing nothing at the moment. Users won't have any effect at all. And if I go and find zlib, that's all the usage we're having from all these hints being drawn every single frame. Actually finding interactions in themselves is a lot easier. Switching between them, you're not going to have any issues where an interaction is for some reason placed on top of an interaction it shouldn't be. I can smoothly go between these with no issues. Something that has changed is only one interaction is visible at once unless you scroll down. They're in sort of a scrollable menu, whereas before you could see them all. It's more nice and simpler. Props to Charlie for the designs and stuff like that. But as you can see here, hose branch, this is what is defined in the config as a pre-connect. If I were to grab that, it would instantly give me, it connect a rail instantly to that. Whereas if I come over here, I can take a 70mm length, which this string is customizable. 70mm length in the UK is our supply length. You can change that string to supply or whatever hose type you want. And then same with this one. This will be my attack line. This will be my thingy line. And what I will do actually is open this because I've forgotten. Don't mind me. So now a lot of things when you come over to the back, there's no interactions visible really here apart from the view panel, which I've actually put in the wrong place. So ignore me. And actually I've just thought of a vehicle that is going to be better to display this, which is this one. And again, this one's actually set up. So obviously here now I have my hydrant key. Every single string you see is obviously changeable to anything you want. I can go over to our side, which I've configured, and grab a length. If I come like this, I've now got my supply length. This can be returned at any point as you wish, like that. And then if I were to change, they're all currently the same, but if you were to change them and take a length like that, it would be different. And if we were to take my key, I'd be given a nice little hydrant key. Model and offsets will change a little bit there. This also is returnable. But if I were then to come up to any hydrant that is configured within the resource, I will get a nice blue pop-up that allows me to connect it. And now this hydrant is actually networked now. Any user can come up to this, they can interact with it, they can open, close it, remove the hydrant key, anything. And it's not limited to the user that put it down. If I were to go to open hydrant, does this, currently I've clearly missed something, so it's a bit broken. But usually it'll open you up to a screen where you can see it doing it there. You can see it's incredibly broken. It's rotating on the wrong axis. But you can use arrow keys to simply open and close it. And depending on how open it is, and it will be how much flow you actually have for the hydrant. If you have a hose connected, obviously you're not going to have this water spewing out. But this allows the functionality of actually flushing your hydrants and such. And you can cancel that. It should have placed the camera on top. That obviously is not working, so that'll be on my list. And then you can obviously disconnect your hydrant, your hose wrench, and that can be connected anytime you want. So I'll actually leave it on while I go and connect a supply line, which is, remember, this is all temporary, well, in development. So now I have my supply line and I've got multiple options of valves to connect it to. And it's a lot easier to find these valves. You'll instantly get connected, and then I can run over here, connect this to the configured connection point, which currently is missing a string. Ignore that. And then something that was big and heavy suggested on the previous version is to actually be able to disconnect the supply from the hydrant itself, which is something you will now be able to do. That's the point of this interaction that you can actually see. And then you will also be able to disconnect it from the vehicle end as well. But I won't allow it to be disconnected while water is flowing through it, essentially. Ignore this, because this will all be fixed up and changed. But then same applies with other things. For example, if I come over here, I have actually got a new model in order, which is a hose model here. So what I noticed is the real hose actually was quite small. So if you wanted a big thick hose for your attack lines, it was too small. So this model now can be used on your thicker hoses to make it look more seamless and just look more realistic and better. Models, a big improvement, are now streamed actually within the Zea hose resource instead. They're not external things you have to drag and drop and style them in different orders. They are all within one script. It's one file. That's a huge thing that had to change before. For some reason, it just wouldn't work for the life in it before. But simple things like this, you can see here, is we have all our hose lengths, and at this place on the vehicle, we have these hose lengths. This is the actual label when you go to collect it, what type of hose it gives you, and what the actual length of the hose it gives you. Here, you have all your different intake valves, discharge valves, and where all your pre-connects are. So your pre-connects are automatically attached to a reel, which I'll probably rename that to a pre-connect. Another thing that people have all been really wanting is obviously these hoses you're seeing right now. These do not conflict with anything else in the world. They do not conflict with any other ropes. None of your ropes will change color apart from these ones. But these are custom, so nothing else will use these ropes. That is something that only came about a couple months, maybe 4 months after the actual release of version 1.
Couple of questions, Josh.
I'll come back to it now.
So standpipes, if you're utilizing standpipes, will you have a standpipe key rather than a hydrant wrench?
Yep, customizable config. You can change exactly what models in there, and as default, you'll have different models that will attach to your player, and you can easily swap between them. Do as you wish.
And a couple of questions from thank you, Walkers, for the question. A couple from Torres. Will you be able to have different hose sizes at one time, such as yes, yeah, pretty much. Yeah, you can have your attack line smaller than your supply line, or you can, if you're weird, you can have your attack line bigger than your supply line if you really want. The colors for the hoses, how are they kind of, obviously you can configure them in the config, Josh, but how do you kind of find out what colors they can be, etc.?
So colors, they can be absolutely anything. The colors are streamed from a texture file, which, as you all know, YTD files. Essentially, they are just a texture within the YTD file that you can easily change the color of, and then you would associate that texture to the specific rope type you want. So absolutely any rope can have absolutely any texture you want. If you wanted to put cats and dogs on it, you could. you can absolutely use anything. It's not limited to a color. You can add dirt to your textures if you want, just to make your hoses look a bit more grimy. You can do anything.
That answers your question, Taurus. Is the UI open source?
Zlib, I don't think we will ever open source it. Just for it's the entire framework and everything our resources are now built on. But in the future, I will provide documentation for actually how to use it if you wish to use it on your own resources.
Thanks, Tiago. Hopefully that makes sense. A question for AJ. So if we're using a bigger diameter of attack line, will we lose water faster and require higher pressures? So variable flow rate this is leading at, I think, depending on the size of the hose.
Yeah. If you got a higher diameter, you're obviously going to be pushing more water through, so you will lose water a lot faster. And I'll declare that actually within the hose type itself in that main config file of how much water is lost every millisecond or every so often.
Yes, Taurus, yeah, regarding the hoses. Item support for things such as OX inventory, for the wrenches, standpipe keys, the actual hoses themselves, if that floats your boat.
Item support, I'll be honest, I've tried it many times and I don't have a clue. Every sort of thing will have exports. There'll be an export for absolutely everything you can ever imagine. So if you know how to actually do item support, then you can use exports and then you can feed that back to me and I can then make it default so you don't have to do it.
Same as previous scripts then.
Yes.
Yeah. It was easily done in previous scripts and current scripts, so it'll be the same as before, I imagine. Yeah, Taurus, in the config per hose type, you can define the texture that hose has.
People are typing, we'll let them type. Time controller without an engine for discharge. Yeah, you can still do that on version 1. It's just taking a bit of smart configuration really up to it. Is you just need to ensure that trailer is configured properly. You can just remove pre-connects or remove your supply lamps and just have valves on it and have a pump panel. So it's primarily just straight for pumping that. And there's nowhere else really within it.
That answers your question, Order Ducks. Interesting username. Good to hear, Taurus. A question.
I have a question for the audience. Pump panel wise, do people want to see like specific panels based on your like geographical location? I.e., if you're in America, you can have a different style to a British one. That's something people care about a lot.
Just got a bit quick polling for that if people want to vote on that. Obviously,
Customer.
Mr. Jupkins, it can depend on how many hose types you configure more than anything. I think Josh can probably confirm, but you could, in theory, configure 2 types of attack line. One could be a red and one can be yellow. They can both be used simultaneously. Josh would have to confirm that though.
I think we'll have to make a pump.net.
I think we're going to make a pump panel.net.
So to answer your question before, each hose type has one texture. I can't dynamically change the texture of hoses at runtime. It has to be done beforehand. So if you wanted to have multiple attack lines with different textures, you just have to make multiple actual types. Unfortunately, I mean, it is possible. You do have a limit on types. CFX have got a hard cap on that, but it's upwards of like 100. So you shouldn't be really affected by that. I don't see people having over 10 hose types, if I'm honest.
Oh, very interesting question from Hunterman. Will there be variable hose lengths? If so, will coupling hoses be a feature?
So this has been talked about a lot. The actual coupling of hoses together constantly would cause a nightmare. Because I'm having so many ropes down that are having to be managed in the background. Essentially, the more ropes you have, the more chances you have of going wrong. As cool as it would be. And I did want to do this, and it wasn't my to-do list originally when I was making it. But then I actually turned around and was like, yeah, it's too much to manage in the background. And there's too many areas for it to go wrong there. So you will be able to configure the hose length, but actually coupling together at the moment, until I find a method of actually managing hoses where it's not going to go awfully wrong, then unfortunately not. And Johnson,
I think Charlie's replying to him.
yeah, okay.
I mean,
yeah,
I was, but
some people tend to forget that the actual engine has limitations, unfortunately. So this is actually an idea that I had very recently.
Dangerous.
Put forward. Is if you ever played, for example, the game Emerge NYC, you can actually use your mouse to drag the hose around to readjust it. So the idea that Harry had was users actually being able to use your mouse or interact with the hose to actually move it into the correct position you wanted. So you just be able to use your mouse and just drag the vertice to exactly where you wanted to put it, and then you can really fine tune that hose. Obviously, hoses don't have collisions. They're never going to have collisions unless something in the source code is changed, which I doubt that'll ever happen. I could make a collision system for them, but at that point I might as well just make an entire game, and it would be so performance intensive on the user. Making a collision system, it would be unreal. So that was the idea of moving the vertices to try to move things around.
Door stops to keep to allow hoses into buildings and all of that. I think we had a door wedge at some point.
Yes, it didn't work, but I had another idea for buildings onto actually having deployable hose valves or hose pipes within buildings. So you don't actually, especially for large commercial buildings, you will have hoses pre-configured in those buildings. So you could then just get a supply line or a attack line from the vehicle, carry it into the building, then connect it there. And then you're not having to get your hose all the way through the doorway. It works for high-rise fires and specifically for MLOs that are ones that you teleport into, because currently it doesn't work when you teleport into MLOs. And the only way they work for MLOs you can just walk straight through into.
I'm right in saying, Josh, that Box Editor will crash so the host is not being loaded.
Not sure.
someone in chat seems to think so.
I'm
I think
able
that's
to,
something we can test.
Yeah.
I'm able to use all of my rope resources at the moment without crashes on the Rockstar editor.
And from that person who asked about the tanker trailer, they're asking, obviously trailers don't have an engine to run.
Yeah.
Don't have an engine, so there's no way in the current Z host to configure and not require the engine on the pump.
Yeah, easy. I can just have a quick config field in the actual vehicle config itself and have it so it doesn't require an engine or anything like that. Or maybe I can do some fancy checkings if whether the vehicle actually is a trailer or not. Because if it's defined as a trailer, and then I can maybe just completely negate it from actually requiring the engine to be on.
Cool. Okay. Have a speaker.
I'll go on.
Hello, one more question. Do you have new ideas to Zephyr?
Oh,
Or no?
yes.
We've got loads of new ideas. Zfire. The version 2 of Zfire probably is coming out next year. It's not going to be close. We're just currently maintaining Zfire because it's a very large task. We want to get one resource done at once, but we have a lot of new ideas for Zfire. We won't disclose them yet. We'll keep them secret and we'll let you find them out through work in progress and things like that. But if you have any suggestions, use the suggestions channel and we'll look into that.
Okay. I make these suggestions in chat. Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Thanks.